The first thing of problem solving is avoid the problem. No, why do you have to solve it if you can avoid it? So if you need 2 million, I'm going to say, Bada Socho. Bada Socho, kya 2 million? Salary comes once a month. What you do for the 29 other days is what matters for your happiness. If you haven't made enough mistakes, then you haven't really pushed yourself. But have you corrected adequately for it and in time? So you're very humble. You're saying, sir, आप मुझे बताओ कैसे करूँ मैं करना चाहता हूँ, मैं करूँगा. Afterwards, it is like, I know it. I have done this, तुमने क्या किया है?
So Toshan, welcome to the BarberShop.
I thought it was the Joe Rogan show.
No, it's not. You have made Ashutosh very happy, who thinks that we are supposed to build the Indian Joe Rogan, and I'm like, nahi yaar, we are supposed to be.
There are some similarities there for sure. I think you're doing a good job of it.
Starts with the hairstyle and hopefully ends with it. But no, I think he's done a fantastic job. But to our listeners, Toshan is a very special person because he was the first check that came into Bombay Shaving Company. I remember that call. I remember exactly where. There are certain things, when they happen, you remember where you were and what you were doing. For example, when 26/11 happened, you would likely know where you were when you got the news, or when World Trade Center fell. You would very vividly remember where you were. That phone call with you, I remember, where you said that Deepthi and I will put in 15 lakhs. And I said, yes. Amazing. That was the first commitment. I was outside Sakshi's parents' home in Paschim. We are on the road. And you said, what is the valuation? I said, 30 crores pre. And you said, how much are you raising? I said, 3 crores. And you said, okay, that's roughly an 8% dilution. The valuation seems high, but theek hai.
Whatever valuation you would have said, I would have said valuation seems high. I always say that. It doesn't matter.
So, but I remember that. And Toshan you were my boss for many years. I served clients at Mckinsey with you. Learned from you. A large part of my skill set which I have developed, I can very easily attribute certain things around problem solving, communication, leadership, kindness to the mentorship, very early mentorship that you gave me, and which has converted into friendship over the years. So welcome to the BarberShop, and thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. I hope this is not a reverse thing for all the trouble I gave you at Mckinsey as your manager.
No.
But looking forward to the chat today.
But tell me, we walked around the office and we think about the first 15 lakhs. And of course, you invested in subsequent rounds. But what does it feel like for you to come and see what an idea on a phone call from one lowly manager who's leaving becoming something which is more tangible than that? Like, what does that feel like?
I think, Shantanu, this was the first time I came to this office since you opened it. And I think it was inspiring and humbling at the same time, because you have that board where you show the different fundraise rounds and the valuations. And I'm like, wow, this is a clear marker and you are not hiding it. You're being very transparent about value creation and maybe value destruction also, because, in today's day and age, whatever goes up sometimes comes down. So you need to be thoughtful about it, but you are not. So it's all out in the open for folks. The way you've set up the office, people, like in the way you've created the two brands, and I'm like, it gave me it was, you would have, had you asked me for whichever venture, there was nothing about the venture. Okay, I didn't even evaluate whether shaving creams are required, blades, whatever else it is. It was just you. And what you've done and what you've become, I think, I just felt inspired by it, Shantanu. Really inspiring, and also like you took the risk, okay? Because you would have done spectacularly well in Mckinsey, okay? There is no doubt about it. And yet you said, that's the easy way. Let me take the difficult way, and that's what I really love. And when I saw the office, I was just genuinely impressed by the living, breathing institution that you have created.
It's a very swelling with pride moment coming from you. Like, a lot of people come and appreciate, but that's the thing, right? When you want your coach or when you want your mentor to feel proud, that's like a million times more than everyone else put together. But you had told me very early in our relationship, as you were an early partner at that time, maybe 2-3 years in your partner tenure. And I was a junior associate. We were serving a client, and You had sat me down in a hotel lobby when we were doing a workshop for one of our clients for their 2020 vision. This is 2012 I was doing, right? And you told me that, Shantanu, you will likely leave Mckinsey at the 4 or 5 year point. And in my mind, I disagreed with you. I could not have disagreed with you stronger. Because after 6 years, I was in NIT Nagpur, then I was in IIM Lucknow. Both colleges where I had aimed for IIT ended up at NIT. And everyone around me was the same. Smart but had punched below their weight a little bit. By a small amount, not a large. Then gave CAT, again aimed for Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta, landed up in Lucknow. Again, smart group of peers. But not a single person in either of these institutes had admits to an IIT or ABC and had chosen to be there. They had landed up there because Mckinsey was the first time where I felt I'm punching at my weight. And I'd never wanted to let that feeling go. Also because my younger brother was at IIT Bombay, then was at Stanford. So he was kind of pedigreeing it through. For the first time I felt that I'm at par in my parents' eyes, in my family's eyes. So I never wanted to let that go. But you saw something or you experienced some trend or something you saw which said, I will leave. What was that?
I think this is again going to seem very weird. So I have always had a fascination for IIM Lucknow. Okay, because I always feel exactly what you said. People who take the CAT don't aim to get into IIM Lucknow.
Correct.
You always say, I want to get into A, B or C. But I land up in L. Now what do? It's like, you can either choose to be, or fate gave me a lemon, let me make a lemonade out of it. But I've always found that people from IIM Lucknow want to give it even better. They want to show the A, B and C saying, we can be better than you. And I saw that. Look at our other colleague, Mridul Arora.
Correct.
Was IIM Lucknow. I worked with him. He's a phenomenal investor at Elevation Capital. Rajat Dhawan, the Mckinsey India head, is IIM Lucknow.
Correct.
So if you go out, take that trend, every IIML person I have worked with, I have always found to be spectacular. Okay, so that is one. And you are doing your level best. Okay, everything. You are the only one I knew in my team who knew the name of the watchman, the driver, and the CEO. Yeah. So your ability to transcend organizations was always very clear. And you told me a very interesting habit of yours. You used to write letters to everybody from Bill Gates to Barack Obama to God knows who. I'm like, who does this? Why do you even write? They're never going to respond back. But for you, it was a habit you had built, which I just found to be very different. So you never tried to impress by problem solving. Okay, you just solved a problem. You never tried to claim credit. You always gave credit. And some of those things I just said, look, this guy at some stage, and I knew your family background where, your father had shifted from a very stable corporate job and he took risks. So I was sure that at some stage you're going to get bitten by the bug. And I think Mckinsey is a phenomenal place, but there are even more spectacular things that one can do, which I think my first investment has shown to be correct with. So you're financing my kids' education. So I've told them they can aspire for better, and not IIM Lucknow.
No, but you never. First of all, I don't think you can finance your kids' education through Bombay Shaving Company stock until we go public. So, but you are one of the very few investors who has not sold a single share despite multiple cajoling requests from my side to allow other investors to come in. But yeah. In my mind, when investors have that kind of faith and belief that I don't want to sell ever until I need the money, and at that point in time I'll let you know. It's a very conflicting thing for me because I want to tactically close the round and structure it. But in my mind, I'm like, wow, someone like Toshan has such belief that wants to hold and stay. Then we're doing something right.
But it has nothing to do with belief. It has to do all with I don't need liquidity. So that's taken care of. If I needed liquidity, that was one thing. But if you invest very early, the worst thing you should do if something is successful is sell it, because you get a 6x return. You stay on, somebody who comes in at that point is going to make a 200x return when the concept is proven.
Correct.
So just the risk return is, if an entity you invest early is doing well, you should never sell. You should then hold on to it. And all the VCs, as a part of cap table cleanup, are going to push you to sell. You are going to have to say, if it's not in the contract, I'm not going to sell. If it's doing well.
Yeah.
And it is, and that's why I double down. Because if you know something is doing well, why sell? You should just double down on it because the risk return is disproportionate.
Correct.
Disproportionate. So the only reason is if a founder is under compulsion and then requests me saying, no, please do it. And because the VC firm is arm twisting, that is the only reason I would do. On liquidity, of course, but thank God I don't think I'll need liquidity to sell. But that's what I mean. People who make the real money on angel investing are not the ones who sell at 5x or 6x. You have to wait till it becomes 1000x, which as per your chart, I think will happen.
I hope so. I really hope then Asya and Ehan can go on to education that is as exorbitant as they want it to be. But coming to, and I'll come to the VC part and your investing philosophy in a bit. But you did something similar at the same tenure at Mckinsey, which is to leave. And I met, by the way, it was a separate story, but Ramesh Mangaleshwaran called me up one day and said, "Hey, I'm coming to Delhi, and can we do dinner?" I said, "Sure, let's catch up for dinner." When I said 17th, Marie will organize. I said, "No, you and I will only organize. We don't need a third person to organize dinner between you." He said, "Hey, kaam karte hain. Can you call some Mckinsey alums?" I said, "Which Mckinsey alums?" He's like, "All the people who you think are cool, get them together." I said, "Ramesh, I have a dinner on 18th. I have a board meeting on 18th. So 17th for dinner to throw a big party might be a little tricky." He said, "No, 17th dinner, not 18th. I'm asking for 17th dinner." So I said, "ठीक है." He was also a boss, so I could not say no beyond the point. I said, "ठीक है." I was like, "Look, Ramesh, if you are ready to sponsor a party for me and my friends, more than happy. It's on your dime." He's like, no, it's on your dime, on my time. I said,
wow.
Okay. So in that party, Ramesh told me about how you were being coaxed by the partnership to stay back when you had left, and in a very similar, you went on to join investing, blue chip bulge bracket private equity fund. But what was that? And I just want to kind of double click on your career a little bit, and also go to the early parts of what that one paper article on salary in McKinsey and how that pushed you as a 7th standard kid. But talk about this leaving McKinsey at the 4-year point.
Now you have done your research, so which was not one of her strong points, but still I think that good it has changed. See, I think to me the whole philosophy of life is regret minimization. If I think about something for 3 months, if it just doesn't let me sleep, kar do, because what is the downside? So that time I said, look, same tenure as yours, I felt, this private equity seemed like a good thing. I like investing. Let me join and see what happens. And there are several things which I learned from that experience. Some of my mentors had done a similar thing. So I said, let's try it. But I realized what I love is a global experience. And private equity essentially is a very local game. You have to go very deep. And that's why I actually then decided to come back to McKinsey. Okay, which was also not usual in those days, because there was a whole thing of you left only once kind of thing. But the firm was quite, nice enough to take me back. And then I had another 14, 15 years with the firm. But my whole philosophy is, and Ramesh knows it very well, is if I start thinking, I will do the craziest things possible. Okay, so, in McKinsey, I said, okay, let me go to Indonesia. Not many people want to go there. Let me start the Sri Lanka office. The country is a very small country. Why would you do Sri Lanka? Okay. Even now, I do very crazy stuff around mountaineering and so on. Because I just feel that we live only once. And you cannot live life in hindsight. Just take the risk. What's the worst? You will end up, even if you're ending up at that same place, the experience that you have got, the learnings, and for me, it's not just return on time, it's the fun on time invested. Okay, it is not just return on time. Roti to ho jayega. Okay, 40 is a very important concept. If I don't enjoy what I'm doing, it doesn't matter.
And is that something that has evolved over a period of time? The 40 versus roti? It's very interesting, by the way. These are terms I'm hearing for the first time, but
I also planned for this. No, so I think, there is a certain bare minimum, quote unquote, monetary wealth that you need, because without that you cannot take the risks, or at least somebody like me cannot take that risk. But once that is done, what do you do? Because money can go up and down. Time goes only one way. Okay, time doesn't go in reverse. So, and at the end of the day, think about it, right? We are talking right now, we are spending time. It should always be like, this is the best thing that I could have done for my time.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I may get, and one of our mutual friends, Faridun, has this concept saying there is financial income and there is psychic income. Okay. If you don't, and psychic income comes through the colleagues you work with. If you're always stressed, it's never going to be, because remember, salary comes once a month. What you do for the 29 other days is what matters for your happiness.
But it's not easy to think like this, by the way. It's a training. It's a muscle you build to think, and you need a certain amount of luxury in terms of maturity, stability, and self-confidence to be. Would you think a 25-year-old? Let me switch the question. Would a 25-year-old?
No, I don't think a 25-year-old could or should, because 25-year-old could either sort of go all in, double down, because they have time on their side. Okay. They have time on their side. Remember, think about it. They may not have the money, but they have time. So even if they fail, they can always restart again. Okay. A 45-year-old with a mortgage debt, with ex-kids, having to pay, the risk appetites are very different.
Correct.
So I think you just need to balance your life situation. Now, a 45-year-old who's got his basics covered, who's got what I call as safety assets. Safety assets are done, no? So tum jo bhi karna hai karo na. It's your time. Who can stop you? I think the best thing that can happen to you is you have the freedom to select your time. What do you do with your time? If somebody controls your time, then it's not worth it.
That's amazing. I met our common friend Aniket Nikum recently. Aniket Nikum was a very interesting human being early on in his career, kind of, right? Because super high on intellect, but did not go to college and just cleared CA, CFA, was just brilliant at cracking exams, but socially had not had the hostel experience, college experience, and so on. But it's amazing to see how he has evolved and become like this really smart guy. But he told me that there will be very few times in life where time, energy, and money will all be at global maxima.
But I actually think it never happens. So I have exactly on time, money, and health. So instead of energy, I say this. So when you are very young, you have health and time, but no money.
Correct.
Okay. Very old, you have money and time, but your health is tottering.
Correct.
And the interim, time is not available for you, because money is there, health is there, but time for what you want. So I think if you can get that triangle right, that time, money, and health, and Aniket called it energy, it could be whatever, but you get that triangle right, you will live the life that you want to.
It's amazing actually for me, because I remember being with you for weird reasons, or call it serendipity, at interesting moments in your life. I was there with you when Vivek called you up and told you that your senior partnership had come through. And I was there with you only for that 1 or 1.5 hours in the evening where we had come to have poha with you and Deepti. And you had got the call in that 1.5 hours itself. For me, making senior partner at Mckinsey was a life-changing thing. I would have expected for you to have been over the moon and all of that. But your response to that was that this was anyways going to happen. And it is one step more towards me doing what I want to do, which is after 40, I will, kind of do my own thing and retire. That clarity is quite incredible. How does that happen? Like, do you start thinking about this consciously at some point in time?
So, obviously, maybe I was a good actor to have feigned that whole nonchalance and calm and centeredness. I don't think it's that way. But I also think, when you are wanting something, okay, the chase is always gives us all humans a more high than when it actually happens. Because when it actually happens, you are like, now what? Now what? Because and it also happens, when you're climbing for a mountain, because I do a lot of mountain peaks and all. The training, the preparation, that's the phenomenal thing. Because on the peak, you are there only for 5 minutes. You'll freeze. So you have to come down. You do your photo op, smiley, selfie. Sometimes you need proofs that you have actually submitted. So there are certain ways you do that. But then you are down. And then it's back to the normal thing that you have to do. So I actually think that the journey, the training, the preparation, the wanting for it is where you have actually lived it. Whether you get it or not, that's not in your hands. It's not in your hands.
That's what people say about love also, right? The idea of love far supersedes love itself.
Yeah.
Which is why the chase is more important. So Toshan, wanted to kind of, I remember you told me about the article in the newspaper around a salary of one of your neighbors in his first job, which took you down a path that was very rigidly decided and committed on by you very early in your life. Talk about that and how it shaped you.
By the way, that person was not a neighbor. I just read in the India Today. It just had all these people standing in various poses with suits and ties, and it just spoke about the starting salaries from IIMs and all. And I told my father that, look, this guy is getting paid so much. So my father looked at it and said, do you want to meet him?
How much was the salary?
3 lakhs per year.
Okay. This is what, 1995, 92?
1992.
Okay.
So like 3 lakhs per year, or so it was 30,000-40,000 a month, or maybe it was slightly more in that range.
And how old were you?
I was just 10 standard, so maybe 15 or 16. So my father said, yeah, I think we can meet this guy. I know where he stays. So my father called my uncle my uncle was his neighbor. So he rang him up and he said, yeah, come and meet. So essentially, I don't remember much of that conversation, but that guy told me, if you want to earn this money, go to Podar College, go take commerce, go to IIM, join Mckinsey. So I just remembered those 3 things because, law of least effort. I'm a very lazy person. So this is the only 3 things to do. He said, yeah, only 3 things to do. I did the same. Went to Podar College, went to IIM, joined Mckinsey. That was the simplest path. So if, somebody tells me, look, this is the easiest way to get something done, then why struggle? The first thing of problem solving is avoid the problem. No, why do you have to solve it if you can avoid it? So if that was the goal, fastest way to reach it. So I asked him, and he's a great friend, Rishikesh Parandekar. So, and he still remembers the conversation. I remember very bit. I said, I only remembered the 3 institutions you told me about.
Wow, that's amazing. And at any point, did you feel that you wanted to waver out, go to banking? You're obviously very good with numbers. There was a time when iBanking, etc. would have probably been an option, but you kept your eye of the parrot was clear?
No. So the summers in IIM Ahmedabad, where now of course is different 22 years later, but in our times, consulting firms didn't come for summers. So that's when I actually had joined a bank, investment bank, do credit derivative structuring in London. And there, I like the world of numbers. I mean, I'm still very comfortable. I work a lot with banks. Incidentally, the distance at which you and I are sitting now was the distance at which Anshu Jain's cabin was. So Anshu Jain was the head of that desk in Deutsche Bank, and then he went on to be the global CEO. So it was, to me, the highlight of the summer was seeing Anshu Jain and then playing cricket, because he was a very great cricket fan.
Correct.
But I realized that just numbers, and that's when the whole discussion on money, because that you can get. But banking makes it boring, in my view. Just doing the same structuring again and again, as opposed to working across industries, solving things. And that's why it reinforced the thing to do consulting.
So you said, okay, fine. You wanted to do the banking. You did the banking summer.
There was no option, no. The option would have been some other FMCG or something, where again the whole monetary thing played a lot, because and international and so on. So I was like, "Arey, London mein kaam kar raha hai to acha hai."
But final placements at Ahmedabad were tricky that year for
Very
many
tricky,
reasons.
because we had the earthquake and the Godhra riots. So a lot of firms backed out. Only investment banks came. McKinsey didn't come, BCG didn't come, and all investment banks, because they had flown from Tokyo, London, Singapore the night before they were there when the riots broke. The next morning, Ahmedabad was shut. The city was up in flames, literally. And all the investment banks said, Ki, we'll give you an offer if you sign off. And you have this process, which is a very gun to your head, sign, and then you are out of the system. I said, why? The institute doesn't force me to do this. I want to still see if I can get into a consulting thing. And they said, but McKinsey, BCG, others are not even there. And I said, theek hai na, I will play my thing there. So everybody rejected me. So at the end of the first day of placements, I had no job.
Are you serious?
I had 0 jobs. Then BCG actually called us to Mumbai. And I couldn't crack the BCG first round case also. So I was eliminated from BCG also. And there was no clarity whether McKinsey will come to campus or not. Okay. And McKinsey had this whole thing of, so many of the good candidates have gone away. We will not come because unless we see the best, we will not do it and all. So it's a right thing from McKinsey's standpoint. I was like, okay, abhi nahi hai to nahi hai. We'll do something else. Then McKinsey came and they took only one candidate that year. Normally these days McKinsey takes like 30, 15. It's almost like you need a bus to accommodate. But that time they took only one, and for some reason they selected me.
Wow.
It was in hindsight, it makes for a great story. Living it's very stressful.
Because it would have been over a period of time also.
Yeah, 4 weeks. Wow. 4 weeks when everybody in campus is celebrating, partying. You are like, हाँ यार, ठीक है, नहीं है अभी क्या करे?
That's unique,
Job
right?
नहीं है तो नहीं है.
There is a campus where there is celebrating and partying, and then there is a city which is rioting. Wow. And then there is you who wants to do one thing but doesn't want to do the other, and then has to wait for.
I think who knows? Maybe it was. That's where I just believe it. Maybe it was serendipity and so on. Because in that fraction, I could have fallen prey and said, yes, I will do banking. I could have. But for some strange reason, to me, it was more like they were telling me to do something which was not a part of the rule. I will not do it. And they said, okay, we cannot. Because what the banks didn't do is they didn't make a formal offer then.
Correct.
If they make a formal offer, they have to keep it valid for that much time till I play my dream and so on. So that the campus rules then as of today are also very restrictive in that sense.
Wow. But tell me about McKinsey. You spent half your life there in some shape or form?
18 years, yeah.
You started offices, you led a global private equity practice, you were responsible for people like me leaving. So how sum that up for me a little bit, because that's an institution that I hold in the deepest respect, much to the chagrin of a lot of people here who say, this is not McKinsey. Why do you keep giving examples of McKinsey? It is not. And they have to beat it out of me a little bit, but it stays. And it was my first job as it was yours. But tell me about what 20 years there meant to you and how it was like.
I think McKinsey is a fantastic club. Okay, membership into that club is desired by folks because of what it stands for and so on. And I think in terms of its global thing, I think McKinsey has given me the confidence that work today in India, tomorrow in Africa, third day in Mexico, it's fine. I mean, I just don't think the place and location matters. Your ability to understand people, cultures, communications. I think outside of McKinsey, now I see most of the time I'm like, what are you talking of? Just get to the point. People do this jalebi method of communication. You are like, I'm waiting. Kuch to bolo, what is relevant? But in McKinsey, you learn the pyramid principles. You learn how to be very articulate. You learn stakeholder management. In life, you don't have one stakeholder. You have to balance so many considerations. So, and being able to do that with very interesting intellectual problems. So McKinsey gives you the ability to work with regulators on one side, startup unicorns on the third. You can take a public policy issue and you can go deep into it. You have so much freedom and flexibility that you really develop yourself to the fullest. Of course, there are things like legal, compliance, which you never learn in McKinsey. Okay, that's the thing, and McKinsey is very purist. It's white or black. But you at least learn the purest form of communication, purest form of problem solving. How do you build a culture? It is not possible. I mean, today, the age of a Fortune 500 company is like 9 years.
Correct.
So you cannot more than that. McKinsey stayed on and has become even more coveted in that sense since it was started in 1926.
Correct. It's a 100-year-old business almost.
It's going to get to 100 years. And you don't. And look at any 100-year institution. All of them have the secret sauce. J&J, IBM, McKinsey. Colgate. So you cannot become a global institution without your specialness. And I think to me, McKinsey, the specialness is, McKinsey realizes that the only assets, like Bombay Shaving Company, you have a brand, but you're also giving a product. McKinsey's product is the outstanding people it has. And not only in McKinsey, but outside. All of us are great fans of McKinsey.
Correct. It's amazing how powerful McKinsey is for alums more than it is for current people, like current employees of McKinsey.
Phenomenal.
Tell me a little bit about the kind of CEOs, and I wanted to really go deeper on this with you, Toshan, just because of One is, of course, your breadth of experience across multiple axes, right? Geography, industries, as an investor through private equity. You've seen CEOs of multiple companies who invest in founders. But on the farmer, on CEOs, and we have had discussions about good CEOs and great CEOs. But in your mind, break that down a little bit in terms of what really it takes to make a good CEO a great one, or a good leader into a great leader of people.
See, I think good leader manages. Okay, a great leader leads. Okay, and it's almost like saying, you're attributing, or maybe step back. I think a great leader is obsessed. Okay, he's obsessed with getting things done, but he's not, and in my view, great leaders know the cost of the last branch thing and will have a view on the 5-year industry. It's almost like one eye has the microscope, other eye has a telescope. Okay, and it is very dizzying when you have to deal with a cafeteria issue and the next day you're meeting the president of the country on similar topics. But great leaders are able to transcend that. They are able to compartmentalize. Good leaders, of course, will get there. I mean, good leaders manage, they understand stakeholders. Great leaders know where to play very well. How to play is tactics. Great leaders focus on strategy. Okay, you get where to play right, how to play happens. And one of my best things is, 2011 I had looked at this, the difference between where to play and how to play. Because to me, then I used to see CEOs who were working very hard, they were great at people, great at XYZ, and yet the results were not as well. Whereas there were a few people who got their where to play right. So I did this analysis in sports. Okay, Roger Federer at that time was the number one tennis player. Some people still think he is, but not statistically. So what was Roger Federer's annual income that time?
I'm assuming 25 billion, 15 to 25 million?
$50 million, give or take. So price plus endorsements.
Okay.
The number 10 player in the world at that time was a guy called Juan Del Potro.
Correct.
Okay.
Juan Martin, the Argentinian.
So what was his income at that time?
1/20th?
Take a number now. I mean, you're good at maths.
3 million, 2 million.
It was 15 million.
Huh.
Okay. Now take out tennis. Go to the next 5 racket sports: table tennis, badminton, squash, lacrosse. Take the number 1 player in those games. What is their average of their incomes?
We're below Juan Martin Del Potro, I'm assuming.
That is given, but what is the number?
Number 1 in squash, table tennis, badminton. $1 million to $2 million a year?
$900,000. So now you think of it and say, hard work. Does a number 1 badminton guy work less hard than Federer does?
No.
Is he less committed than Federer? Is he less sacrificing than Federer? Absolutely not. He's doing the same thing. Now, what explains the gap between 50 and say 1 million? Round up the thing.
Yeah. It is
not that the Federer is a great player. That gap is only 3.2 times. That's the gap between Del Potro and Federer.
Correct.
Okay. The real gap is the 15 times delta that's there between the number
table
1
tennis and tennis
and Juan Del Potro. So if you get your where to play right, and that's where great CEOs really understand where to play. Now, that where to play could be a niche which they uncover, or it is like, in many countries, including India, if there is a license to be given, my view is just take it. Great leaders don't wait for business plans. They know the value of a license because license creates a moat.
Correct.
Creates a regulatory moat. So get the license and you'll figure out the business plan.
Correct.
Okay. So to me, that's very important. Great leaders they're very happy doing the same boring things again and again. Okay. You see them, people are like, and now this is good leaders also, but like not so good leaders always need the next big project or next new thing. That doesn't, like 3M. Somebody was telling me the other day that 3M makes a post-it. Anybody can copy a post-it.
Correct.
No? Adhesive tapes and filaments, linings. Those are the easiest things to copy. And yet, nobody's been able to copy that from 3M.
Correct.
Because people think of each category as too small, unattractive. the unsexy stuff, the great leaders are willing to keep at it for years. And then the power of compounding, the power of various things takes over.
That's incredible. You're absolutely right. And even Ashish spoke about this at length. And of course, in the lending context, which is unglamorous, unsexy things is where value pools are actually large. Because he's like, if you're a food tech founder, 20,000 people will want to get into food tech. Because everyone eats pizza and biryani and everyone wants to order. But if you think about steel,
nobody knows what it is. They're like, steel? That's the old age.
Correct.
So the less people think about a topic, the better your chances of succeeding in that industry are. So if people say Bombay Shaving Company, but there is always Gillette, there is XYZ, they are too big.
Correct.
I think that's the first sign that anybody who cracks that thing is going to actually make it big.
Correct. Large value pool, right? And today, if you see consolidating waves, right? Today is just SAIL, Jindal and Tata Steel. And Tata Steel is like at 45,000 crores of EBIT. What a business. What an incredible business just because they get one thing right over and over and over again. But it's hard, right, for a CEO, and it's something I struggle with personally, is to get into the weeds of detail and have a 3 to 5 year strategic mandate which to the team. And I can probably do individually both of these to a decent level. I cannot do both of them together and move between them as easily. What is that muscle, and who have you seen practice that or wield that muscle or flex it in a very good way?
See, I think there is also an element of complementarity. Whether it's co-founders, leadership teams, and can the CEO really have somebody who can be the alter ego?
Okay.
Who can complement it in that sense, because you need somebody to, somebody, it's like you can't drive a car only with the accelerator, growth and vision and so on. You need accelerator, brake and the rear view mirror, front mirror. You need all of those things to work. So in a team, and Edward de Bono did this very brilliantly. He structured it very well in the thinking hats, where you do have somebody who's saying, guys, there's always risk. Now, if you only have the risk guy run the show, you will never be able to grow. But if you have only growth, you're going to make mistakes.
Correct.
So how does the CEO complement himself? Is he self-aware? And some of the best CEOs are actually quite self-aware, saying, look, I need you to do X. Okay, the iconic example where you had Steve Jobs and then you have Tim Cook and you're Johnny Ive. So Johnny Ive was design, creative. Somebody looking at saying, forget design and all. Kitna mein banta hai? How to reduce that? So you need somebody who's constantly thinking customer experience, but somebody who's thinking cost. And how do you balance those things out? And the great CEOs are the ones who complement themselves, such that otherwise the biggest risk is the CEO himself. The CEO cannot take a vacation.
Wow. What have you seen great CEOs take shitty decisions?
Always happens.
Give me an example of a client situation or something, someone close to you.
Yeah, the lack of not being sued, not having gag orders, not having all of those. So
censor appropriately.
Yeah, censor appropriately. It's also the decisions, and maybe I'll just generalize a bit. You have CEOs just enter certain industries because you just said everybody's doing it. Okay, and in today's day and age, when the CEO even if the CEO didn't want to, board members are asking, why are we not in this? Constantly people are sending him messages. Some company does well in the US saying, guys, we should be diversifying and so on. CEOs often feel pressurized.
Correct.
Okay. And it's almost like saying, maine bhi kar diya. The CEO's heart is not there in it. So bad decisions happen when the CEO is doing it for managing and for other reasons, or there is a Superman complex.
Okay.
You're saying, I have done this in the past, or it's like, I have been successful, and you just say, nobody succeeded. Now, 9 times out of 10 when nobody has succeeded, there is a valid reason. 1 time out of 10, you will actually go and disrupt the thing. Okay. So, are you in the 9 times bracket or the 1 time bracket? It's a very thin line, right? The percentages are against you. So, I have seen people do market entries completely wrong. Okay. And you had a whole bunch of people do it. The first wave of venture capital investments in India, okay, was completely shitty because it was all like, all opportunities going to go up. People didn't really have business models to make money, and you hoped that then if you did investment at X, somebody else would come and price it upwards, and everybody lost their money. So But the same people who did those mistakes have gone on to improve and learn from it. So to me, it is not just about making the mistake. I think mistakes you have to make. I mean, if you haven't made enough mistakes, then you haven't really pushed yourself. But have you corrected adequately for it and in time? So I have this whole thing of fail the failure faster. Okay. Can you fail the failure faster? Can you recognize it's a failure? Because at some level, you need to give it enough time, because sometimes it's not a failure. Just the initial reactions are not as positive. Yeah, it's not positive. But after a period of time, if it's still not working, are you hedging it? Are you mitigating it? Or are you not? Okay. Only thing I would say is most CEO mistakes are not on the business side. They are on the people side. Okay. They've made mistakes. I think business mistakes, I think CEOs by virtue of industry experience, and there are so many other stakeholder issues, they will not make those mistakes. They make mistakes on people, either by sort of not getting as connected on the culture side or making themselves indispensable. To me, that's the other issue, because there was always, growing up for a long time, there was this whole thing of an iconic CEO.
Correct.
Okay, iconic, who could do no wrong, who would walk into boardrooms and media stuff and so on with the same elan. And it was almost like if he had Kingfisher beer, everybody would want to have Kingfisher beer. Because the whole thing was, maybe there is something secret there that if I imitate it.
Role modeling and all the irrelevant things.
The irrelevant matters you are role modeling. But I think it's not that style of leadership, because time is a great equalizer. So all of those CEOs, McKinsey wrote this book of Good to Great. And if you track all the CEOs and the companies, after 20 years, many of those companies don't even exist. They have had spectacular failures. Why? Because you're also measuring a CEO's greatness at a point in time.
Correct.
Okay. And everybody wants to retire on a high. And nobody wants, after that, everyone wants to say, मैं तो था नहीं ना, किसी और ने ले लिया.
Correct.
No, but that's where I also think that people, the shareholder, owner CEOs are actually more thoughtful, because it is their money. Okay. It is their money, because everything is like, it affects directly, and also their horizon is a very long-term horizon. A professional CEO has advantages, but his horizon is his tenure.
Correct.
And you have to maximize the tenure, you have to maximize the things during that period of time. And you are maximizing for metrics.
Correct.
The great CEOs don't maximize for metrics. Because if you are maximizing for a metric, then you are very, very short term. You are actually, you just maximize for long-term value creation, and value defined very loosely, deliberately. You can have short-term metrics, but not long-term only toward those two.
But, you make an interesting point. I've seen both in the founder construct, early stage, growth stage, near public and public, and of course, McKinsey clients, large leaders who are, kind of 30% share of the category and so on. Both CEOs are under short-term pressure more than they're under long-term pressure. Public markets, because of quarterly earnings, especially in the US, and you'll always have some Goldman analyst asking 20 questions which are irrelevant, so you are solving for that. And founders, because when am I going to pass the next bag of valuation to the next investor? So are those decisions a function of environment? And then how have you seen CEOs who are able to, whether professional or promoter, have you seen CEOs who are able to soak in that pressure and then do what's right for the company?
Yeah, I think you need to be thick-skinned. Okay, the CEO job is an extremely tough job. Extremely tough job, and you're very lonely, because your whisper will become a scream. So you can't say, "Oh, I'm too stressed." You say that as a CEO, you're too stressed. Everybody will be like, "LinkedIn pe next resume kaise dalu?" Because boss stressed hai.
Correct.
Okay, you cannot. So you have to always the perception you have to give, the emotions you have to communicate. It's a very, very high stressful thing, and I always envy CEOs. Shantanu, you for that matter. I mean, you are always smiling, happy. I'm sure you have 20 problems there. I think if you're not thick-skinned, you should not be a CEO. You can be an advisor, you can be a business leader, you can be whatever else. But a CEO every action is going to be scrutinized by critics like me, who are going to say, those 3 things were good, but those 2 वो तुमको better करना था. Here are 2 examples of what you should have done. Okay. It's very easy to do that.
Yeah.
But I think if thick-skinnedness is one thing, and you need to be able to shut off. Okay, now you cannot shut off by doing nothing. That's why I actually think of CEOs. You need to have some hobby, some other passion. CEOs who are on different boards, because you have to have a life. Okay, outside, because that's the only way you will have a valve which will actually take some of these stresses off you, and it will get you to do the right thing. Okay, so Brad Pitt. Now I don't know how true it is or not. And people may again say Brad Pitt is not the right example. He hasn't done as many hit movies. But Brad Pitt's point was he does a movie for 3-4 years. He will do one movie and then take a break for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. He said if you're constantly on the treadmill, you don't get time to reflect. You don't get time to see. So for a CEO, he can't do what a Brad Pitt does by I'm going to go away. But he needs time off. He needs time to recharge, rejuvenate, refresh and reflect on what happened. It's like, CEO is constantly on the dance floor. Okay, he's dancing. People are clicking. You need to get on the balcony and then analyze what you did. If you don't do that, you will never be a better dancer. You need to do something else also.
People underestimate the value of rejuvenation and recharging and taking a step back. And you're right, it's a hugely dichotomous role to be a CEO because you're always in conflict. Inside, you're worried. There are 20 risks that you have seen before everyone else. There are it's like the captain of the Titanic who knows there are 20 icebergs, right? You know it, but you know that your company will never reach full potential if it is scared. You have to be swinging for the fences at every level, whether it's a Salesforce professional, a marketing executive, your chief operating officer. Everyone has to be swinging for the fences. They can never do that if they feel that we are going to hit an iceberg. So for you have to be outwardly deeply positive, optimistic, and not in an inauthentic way, in a very authentic,
people
genuine
see
way.
Through the inauthentic behavior very clearly.
But inside you're screwed. The stress is massive. This time we had a board meeting. It was not. We for the first time in 7 quarters we did not track to plan. We missed our plan by 5%. 5 or 7%. The board meeting was one where our board had to cheerlead us a little bit and say, hey guys, it's okay. We have grown 2.5x over the same quarter last year. It's not as pessimistic as you're making it out to be. But you're right, a whisper becomes a scream because I know that in the last 1 month, the company has been under a lot of stress. Hence going for an offsite, hence taking people out, reflecting. Sriram Kalyanaraman is coming and doing a long-term session on death, which is when you're on your deathbed, what is your state of mind? And hence, how does that reflect in the best work you will do today? And then forcefully get people to have a long-term view in an environment that is very short-term driven. But it's damn hard, man.
It's damn hard, and but that's the pleasure of being a CEO, the joy, the empowerment that you get as a CEO. But it comes with its there's no free lunch or free beer. But I think CEOs are able to sort of manage that, and I think the key thing which I've seen is, can they pass on that a bit of that sense of CEO-ship to the others?
Okay.
Because all of that stress, why is it there? Because they have the cockpit view, but the company is not just theirs. And that's where, people who have been able to create that shared sense of ownership. It is also my company. Okay. It is not like, the worst thing is, मेरा problem नहीं है. ये किसी और का problem है. किसी और ने किया है. But अगर, if it is your company, if you are the helm, what decision would you do? And it is, that's a CEO who is actually, if people decide things as if they were the CEO, they had that sense of ownership. I think CEO's job is 1/4 done, because he doesn't have to constantly worry. That's another thing from Mckinsey, because you always were told that, there are no rules.
Correct.
If you think it is the right thing and you can justify to yourself and then to somebody else, go ahead and do it. Nobody will stop you. So that sense, distilling that sense of ownership and empowerment, along with the corresponding obligations, I think that if the CEO can achieve, I think is phenomenal.
Tell me about this, and we were exchanging notes about this discussion. One thing that caught my eye on the CEO skill set was the chess player versus badminton player analogy. What is that about?
So I always think that a CEO has to be able to play chess. And, Gary Kasparov has written a phenomenal book called Life Imitates Chess.
Okay.
And given Kasparov's grandmastership, and then he tried to change the Russian system and his efforts. And he said, the simplest level, chess is not just about move to move. Very amateur players play move to move, saying today's problem, solve it. Badminton, I have a shot, I have to try to hit it. Okay. The game, a point in badminton can be finished in the next shot itself.
Correct.
So all you are doing is trying to hit fast, hit early, close. Chess, and especially when the adversaries are reasonably equal. I mean, if you have a international master against the ratings, if you have somebody's 2000 rated and somebody who's 1200 rated, the game will get over, but it will not get over as fast as a badminton game.
Correct. Between the same skill.
Yeah. So the even skill gaps. So the chess game is you have to think ahead, you have to develop. The opening is a very different thing from a middle to the end game and so on. Similarly for a CEO. And by the way, in chess, you have is my left side of my queen side, my king side, what are my pawns doing, what are my horses, where is my rook, how is the placement happening, and the market. Unlike chess, where there's only one opponent, here you have many opponents. Sometimes you don't even know if they're opponents or not. Friends become opponents, opponent becomes friends, and life is different. But from a CEO standpoint, he's looking at marshalling resources, figuring out where advantage can be obtained. Badminton is all about the power shots. It's all about making the court-to-court coverage and creating advantage, and you will win in 2 shots.
Correct.
CEOs cannot win in 2 shots. There is no one thing that they can do which will disrupt and change things. You have to get people right, then you get manufacturing, then you get investors, then you get the market, then you have the regulator, then you have the government. When you have so many things to do, it's like a board of chess. A CEO's one action, you do something on the people side, suddenly you have some other problem. The person leaves, joins your competitor, does something else, you have a legal issue on your hand. You think about the ramifications of every move that you do. And unless you can think ahead, okay, you're always going to be reacting. Okay, and the best CEOs know that, this is what I want to do 2 years from now. So what do I need to do today? What do I need to do, the next month? How do I motivate this person? This person is not ready yet. I need to get him or her ready. What do I do? Or maybe I need to change his function. He's always done sales. Let me put him in HR. Now, a good CEO will say, नहीं यार स्पेशलाइजेशन को यूज करते हैं, वो सेल्स है ना, उसको सेल्स करने दो ना, अच्छा सेल्समैन बनेगा. Great says no, I actually need this person to do something else X years later because he's a prized asset for the company, he's a prized resource for me, I want him to succeed. So he needs to learn this dimension. Okay, so how do I move? So you're moving different. Now I don't want to get hammered by saying it's not like everybody's a pawn, but you are playing with your advantages. You have your in chess. Every position that you start with, not the starting, but you will have some advantages and some weaknesses.
Correct.
Every company will have it. Every CEO, he needs to realize, where is my weakness? Okay, how easily can that be exploited? Okay, you will keep working, you will keep developing, and you are always putting yourself in a position of success. And Gary Kasparov says one thing. He says, at the grandmaster level, all it takes is 1 pawn difference to close the game. Because if you have a 1 pawn, you will just exchange everything. You have 2 kings and 1 pawn, and it's generally a good grandmaster will get a victory. So between 2 well-positioned adversaries, smallest weaknesses actually will become big gaps. So you look at, if you're you realize this, if a plane has to go from Bombay to Delhi, you change that angle by 3.5 degrees, you will end up in Kolkata.
Correct.
Because that same gap will get exploited over time. And that's what CEOs, great CEOs, they're thinking ahead and they think backwards from the thing that they want over time.
Amazing. I don't know whether you've read Erapalli Prasanna's autobiography, The Off-Spinner from many years back.
I haven't.
So very similar. You assume that cricket is a spiky sport, right? It's like badminton.
Yeah.
That of course test matches are different, but it is a spike when the ball is bowled and played and fielded. But other than that, then the game kind of continues. Like there's a minute or 2 of kind of field placement and then the next ball is bowled. Erapalli Prasanna used to plan up till 15 to 18 balls into his spell. And typically he would know that his 10th to 12th ball is where he has the maximum chance of getting a wicket because, and he like this, I think Pataudi or someone had said, his captain had said, that Prasanna would be livid if a run was given away on the 8th or 9th ball, because the batsman he was planning for would now not be on strike.
Be on the other side,
and if the batsman was on strike and his plan till the 9th ball was tracked, he would know the way of dismissal. He would say that on the 4th ball of my 3rd over of the spell, I'm going to get this guy caught and bowled. So on the 2nd and 3rd ball, don't give a single away. If it's the other batsman on strike, give a single away, put the field to the back. It's amazing how when people develop excellence in their chosen pursuit or chosen field, the extent to which that becomes like the smallest detail that they are very passionate about.
CEOs obsess over this. The smallest detail actually makes a huge difference. Huge difference. And again, since we are on sports and Ellapalli Prasanna and Federer, let me throw in a controversial sportsman whom I admire for different reasons. Lance Armstrong.
Correct.
Okay. Lance Armstrong, his first biography, which was Every Second Counts.
Correct.
And that just showed, and that, he said he's worked on everything, the kind of clothing you wear to the kind of massage gel you would put to the kind, it's the minutest of the minute things which will actually make a big difference. And so for CEOs, you may almost say that, does the receptionist matter? Have anybody as a receptionist? But Disney actually knows that the employee that Disney focuses on most is, the janitor who's cleaning the parks. So he said, what? Janitor is the person who has the maximum interaction with the guests. Why? Because they come to the janitor and say, which way is the Cinderella's carousel?
Correct.
Which way is this? And he says, if that guy says, I don't know. Or the guy says, this way, in a very different tone, because the janitor is sweeping, cleaning. He says, no, the janitor matters because the janitor, hey, you want to go to Cinderella? Let me take you around. Okay.
Wow.
It makes a big difference because he said, look, otherwise there is nothing to differentiate from one merry-go-round that Disney runs to some merry-go-round which another theme park runs. Disney is all about the story. And his Walt Disney was extremely, and his brother Roy were extremely passionate about the minutest things. And that's what Lance Armstrong did.
Very interesting, Toshan, you speak about long-term vision, visibility, because when Ashish from Off Business was here a few weeks back, he had a very, very contrary point of view, which was that long-term vision gives comfort to short-term failures. That if I have a bad month, it's okay. I have the full year to go. If I have a bad quarter and I have a 3-year vision, I have 11 more quarters to go. So it gives a false sense of complacency if you have. So he measures himself only month on month. In fact, says that China, for their infra projects, banking efficiencies or growth, etc., they have actually weekly measurement, and every week has to be better than the previous week. And that's the only thing that is important, because otherwise you are fooling yourself.
No, I think it's not that, there is a philosophy or school of thought which says what John Maynard Keynes said, that in the long run we are all dead. Okay. Or if I want to justify, I will justify saying, aaj nahi hai, kal ho jayega. Okay. So tomorrow and the future is always better than today and the past. So I think using the future as an excuse is different from saying, unless I know where I have to go, it's like saying if I keep, I'm climbing a wall, I have a ladder, and I'm climbing, I'm measuring myself. Okay, now 7 ladders, 10 rungs, 11 rungs, 12 rungs. Suddenly, all the rungs have gone well, and I realize, shit, I'm on the wrong wall itself. And I have to go all the way back down and find the right wall.
Yeah.
So I do think you need to know where you have to go, and which is where the long-term strategic plan is. You are not like meandering your way, because metrics are important. You absolutely need to measure yourself, you track yourself, and you can track yourself, what Ashish is doing monthly, weekly, daily, hourly, by the minute. It depends, right? A sprinter for 100 meters is not going to track his progress over a month. He's going to track every run. Eliud Kipchoge, even after this many years, he's like the GOAT.
Correct.
Of all marathon runners. Okay. Every training session, he not only tracks metrics, he tracks his feelings. He tracks how did I feel, and he scores himself. I'm saying, if he can do that, so the short term is important, but Eliud Kipchoge does not try and beat every run to be worth, because there is a plan. This is a hill run. This is a easy run. This is a rest day. So there is a plan towards all of it because he's peaking for a particular purpose. So it all depends on the context, number one. Long term is not an excuse for the short term failures. If you may have failures, but so long as you are learning from those, that's okay. But you need to have a plan. Now, of course, on the lighter side, as Muhammad Ali said, that everybody has a plan till you get punched in the face.
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, you will recover from it. You will actually, but you need to have, where am I going with all of this? Otherwise, you are like every day figuring out, I should have done something else.
But the Eliud Kipchoge is an insane example. Like, I think about the fact that he runs 2 hours straight at 21, 22 kilometers per hour, which is for me far faster than a 100-meter sprint also, right? Because but you make an interesting point around how he feels at different points of the run. And again, it's at that level, it's a few seconds here and there that make a difference. So a marathon is about endurance and pushing through when your body doesn't want you to at different times. Do you feel CEOs go through endurance tests a lot as well?
Absolutely, because it is not a sprint, right? You can't say get this sales done, beat this year's numbers. I want to launch a new product. I mean, those are all sprints. But CEO is running a marathon. He has to fuel himself. He has to look at nutrition. He has to look at his hydration. He has to look at, when he's training for the event, he has to look at what are the pit stops on the way. What will I do if there is a heat, if it is too cold? So CEO, if you are running only sprints, it's not, you can always, a movie can be thought of as a sprint. Okay, I do very well in a movie. After it's done, there'll be success, there'll be failure. And there are so many people who are one-trick film stars or one book authors.
Correct.
Okay, because you've put everything into it. It's a sprint. You have won the sprint. After that, what? But CEO, it's absolutely not that. You have to keep doing it repetitively. Eliud Kipchoge also says, by the way, and now you have this Chepte guy, Joshua Chepte guy,
Correct.
who's now taken on, but he's doing 5,000 and 10,000 meters. But he's saying, look, there are so many times I'm bored. I don't want to do this. But that's what differentiates great from the good. The good will say, one off day is okay. But he's saying, no, there is no off day. I may feel bad, but I have to do it. The CEO may feel bad. He may say, this was a bad thing. I had a bad quarter. I had a bad month. I had a bad conversation. But there is no option. You have to keep running. The Johnny Walker thing, Shantanu, which you will like, it's keep walking. You have to keep walking because that's what a CEO is all about. You have to get to the aim that you had actually done. And it's not about sprints. And since you mentioned Kipchoge said that a marathon is not 1 kilometer into 42 sprints kind of thing. It's a very different way that you run. If it was just the sprints and this thing, you would have very different skill sets and winners.
Agree. Which is exactly what, even like, for example, Muhammad Ali or Kobe Bryant, people, and it's amazing how we go back to sport a lot. Someone asked Muhammad Ali when he was doing sit-ups, how many do you do? And he said, I only start counting when it starts hurting.
Yeah, it starts hurting.
And that's when you know that pain or failure in the case of a CEO or something not going to plan is actually where muscle building actually happens. Yeah. It doesn't happen when you're succeeding. Which also makes, in a founder context, which is what I want to get to in a little bit, right? But before that, I think in your notes to me, you had kind of spoken about different kinds of CEOs. And I want to put you on the spot a little bit here, right? One is, of course, frame that out. What are the kinds of CEOs that you have seen? You obviously, have worked very closely with, counseled, advised, invested in yourself. But what are they? And who is the best CEO you have seen from up close? I kind of have a sense of who that is, hypothesis-wise, but I would love to hear it from you.
No, so I think you do have styles of leadership, and that's people do PhDs and write books, novels, movies, everything on it. But to me, it's a very simplistic thing, right? I think there are CEOs who are leading from the front style. It's like, okay, I will not tell you to do what I cannot do myself. Okay, so if it's about sales, let me show you how XX $1 million orders have to be given. And that's how I'm motivating, I'm cheerleading, I'm from the front. There are
very Michael Jordan.
very Michael Jordan. So he's like hitting. There are CEOs who are they are the coach. So they are very iconic in a football team. So it's the Tuchel or Jurgen Klopp and so on. They are making the plays. Okay, they are not playing. Okay, they know who's to be taken, who's not to be taken, what's the plan. They are motivating. They are being tough with the players, but they are not playing. Okay, there's a big difference. Jordan is playing.
Correct.
And you have the CEOs who will always be out there, all decisions. They have a passion for getting into everything. They are a face of the company. And in many ways, institutions are nothing but shadows of those CEOs. And there are other CEOs who are not that way. There are CEOs who are technocrats, who really know the technology behind it, the product behind it. But beyond that, they are like, "Ye sales wheel sab chhod do, HR chhod do." They succeed because they surround themselves with the right folks. They are not the ones talking to the media. They are not the ones who are handling difficult regulatory and government crises. They step back. They know that I am great in this product or I am great in this technology. Let me do a damn good job of it. Everything else, somebody else can do. Now, in a certain context, you have the servant leadership style. Okay, where saying, look, I'm here to help everybody else succeed. Now, that works in consulting firms, it works in service organizations, where you are not commanding an army. See, commanding an army is very different. When the general says jump, everybody says how high.
Correct.
When you are commanding the Delta Force or the SWATs, the Marines, because you know that you are not going to be there with the Marine on the mission.
Correct.
Okay, you need every Marine to think about that in the best him or her in that context. So you are there to empower the Marine. Okay, in the style which works for the artillery and cavalry, that is not used by the SAS. The SAS style of leadership is extremely different. Like, you are alone with your team members, you decide in that situation. We are there to back you. Whatever decision you take, we'll back you. The cavalry and artillery, if you use that same style, everybody asks, why are we doing this? What is the purpose? The mission will go for a toss. You have to jump, you jump. You have to hit, you hit. You don't ask questions. It's just the time between the instruction and the time of action. That's the time, minimize and get it done. So that's why context also matters. I think Churchill was a great wartime prime minister.
Correct.
But failed abysmally in peace. Okay. So there is a style of leadership and there is a context of leadership, I feel. In turnaround situations, you need somebody who is going to be very different, unemotional. In a growth phase, you need somebody who can bond well. So, and very few people actually can transcend everything. Now, it's not just their style, it's just organizations don't have that much reasons to do it. Now, I'm going to talk of 3 people. I mean, it's not about, again, we have to figure out censorship norms there and so on. So one of the CEOs I know, who I really admire, is all about the microscope and telescope that we spoke. He knows the details and yet he surrounds himself. Half of his time, he just spends talking to people outside his company. Okay. Because he says, look, in my company, nobody gives me the bad news. Everybody wants to say yes to me, so I don't have a challenge. Now, who do I get these from? It's everybody outside. So his agenda is to meet X new people every week or X people who are not in his company. The another CEO I know, he has naked ambition. Okay. He just, if I'm number 5, he will say, why not number 1? He's always going for number 1. Everything else doesn't matter. You say, but we don't have capital. Doesn't matter. Number 1. Oh, we don't have the product license. Doesn't matter. Number 1. So he's anchoring everybody and himself to say, just number 1. He's not governed by many of these other considerations. He's saying, look, we have to do it. It's a mission for him. There is a third CEO who's from Sri Lanka. He's not from, I think Sri Lanka has gone through so many ups and downs. They had the LTTE crisis. They had the president, the political situation, the thing. And he's been able to steer the institution with calm. You meet him anytime. How is it? He's very good. He's mature. He's there in it for the long term. He has a sense of gratitude for the country because he's thinking of his job because of who he is. Because they are a very large business. He's almost saying, I owe it to my country to be able to do this. So he's created a sense of purpose for himself. So that's what enables him to go through these daily ups and downs. Because otherwise, IMF has done something. The Sri Lankan rupee depreciates. Those people are rioting. The president is running away. You have all of these things happening. A CEO will be, or chairman or CEO will be damn stressed. And he's like, no, I'm here to do the right thing for my people. I'm privileged and that I'm in this position of empowerment. So he uses a very different way for himself. The second CEO I mentioned would never think of it that way. He's saying, I have to be the largest in my industry. I have to be the number one in my thing. The first CEO would not even think of these metrics. He would think about, where is the vision? Am I getting all the people right? Because he's not focused on goals. He's focused on the system. He's saying, do I have the right system in place? Then the goals will happen. If this year we have to launch a new product, we will launch a new product. This year we have to meet the EBITDA target, we'll meet the EBITDA target. He's less focused on goals. The second CEO, extremely focused on goals. The third CEO has goals of a different kind. You have $1 million, $10 million, $100 million and $1 billion. You have only 4 clubs. You have to make a decision at some stage. I think at 25, you don't know what it means. You don't know what $1 million means. You don't know what 1,000 crore also means. Okay, by the time you're 35, 40, you have a good understanding. What would I want to spend my time doing, number one? Because that's the money can appreciate. Time will only depreciate for me.
Correct.
So what is more important, an appreciating asset or a depreciating asset? Obviously depreciating asset. You have to treat people well on your way up because you'll meet the same people on the way down. You can't sleep on something for more than 6 months. That keeps bugging you. Just do it. Because the opportunities in India are always going to be there. Okay, so if not nothing, you will do something else.